Шановні спікери та гості, можемо...
Dear speakers and guests, we are going to start now. Good afternoon. We're really glad to welcome you here at our event of Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism.
We will have the whole presentation in Ukrainian language. І так, як я сказала, це на чергу.
So this is one more event of Ukrainian Prism. The main topic was elections, different types of elections starting March. Part of our event was dedicated to explanation of what is going on for a foreign audience. This was done jointly with Alexey and Chatham House from Paris, Hague, Brussels, Washington, and we will end this year on the 5th of December in London. And what concerns foreign policy, we should discuss this inside the country as well, because analysis we see in the media usually about domestic agenda and domestic views. We were really glad to see you in July during the first presentation when we spoke about political parties, 11 parties. This analysis is available on the site of FPP.com.ua, and you may find analysis of foreign policy. This was about the declarations of the parties during elections, and now we have the next stage to see how these views that they presented in July were transformed in some agenda. And we do not have coalition agreement because there is no coalition in the parliament, and it transformed into the program of the government, or it was not transformed. We will discuss this issue. We are grateful to the American embassy that supported this project, and it understands the importance that this agenda is identified in Ukraine not only by social and economic issues, but we have that foreign policy, it is really important for changes inside the country. So the plan of our actions will be like this. First, I ask Sergei Gerasimchuk to present our analysis, the analysis of Ukrainian Prism concerning foreign policy in the program of Alexey Goncharuk government. And also we have speakers, 5 wonderful speakers, who present different branches of power and different views. This was really important for us. Alexey Makeev, political director of the Ministry of Foreign Policy. In Ukraine, they are responsible for implementation of the agenda of the government, and also Svyatoslav Yurash, member of the Committee on Foreign Policy and member of Sluga Naroda Party. They are responsible for this policy. Hanna former member of the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee at the Verkhovna Rada. Now she has a fresh view concerning the program of the government. Then Veronika Mavchan, and we will speak about political diplomacy and economization of foreign policy issues. We should speak about this topic. And Mikhailo Pashkov, Razumkov Center. This is for dessert, depending on our discussion. And you see that we have special weather today. And then we will come up to some conclusions, and we will sum up some important conclusions together with our experts. I ask our colleague Sergei Gerasimchuk. He studied the document carefully, and now he is going to tell us about foreign policy block in the program of the government. Thank you very much. It is really pleasant to see you all here, full hall here, despite the weather. And some people attended our July presentation, you know, about directions of foreign policy. We believe that they are really priority, and we analyzed those directions. We analyzed those programs presented by the candidates, and now the program of our government. We analyzed this program. The program of the government appears to be an ambitious document if we are speaking about different dimensions of it. And its full implementation would provide good results for the development of our country. But if we are speaking about foreign policy and steps that are envisaged by the government program, we will see that there are big pluses and big gaps in the program of the government, and I would like to speak about it in more detail. I won't take a lot of time. I'm interested in the opinion of our experts. When we are speaking about the European Union and NATO, in the program of the government, we clearly see the wish of Ukraine to approximate to those structures and to implement a big number of reforms that are envisaged in the process of European and Atlantic integration. The program of the government specified these areas of European and Euro-Atlantic integration, and also EU often is mentioned in the tasks of the government and the ministries, and there is a wish to adapt the legislation and to use European regulations in Ukraine, and also the use of these norms. It will improve the lives of Ukrainian people. And concerning NATO issues, we faced a similar situation. They say that Ukraine should use NATO standards in its work, in its activity. Also, this is about security cooperation in the Black Sea region, the countries of the alliance. And also, we should note that in both cases, in case of EU and in case of NATO, the program doesn't have the aim of membership. They only want to reach some criteria that are necessary for the membership. And this is relevant because membership, this is tango that needs two. It needs two to tango. That's why we cannot say that the achievement of the criteria is the path to these structures. So in the program, there is a powerful economic bloc, economization of foreign policy and support of our exporters, and also involvement on international investment, a lot of tasks concerning domestic reforms, and it is stated that reforms in Ukraine to a large extent will strengthen the economy, and Ukraine will become more attractive. From one side, they are speaking about economization of foreign policy, and from the other side, they say about reinforced economy and the progress in the economy. This will also impact the image of Ukraine on the whole. Also about the gaps we paid attention to. This is about foreign policy area. Those points we focused on in our research repeatedly in our analysis concerning foreign policy, and analysis of the political parties also was carried out by us. This is policy concerning our neighbors and neighbor policy, and we believe that in the program of the government there is not enough information about our relations with our neighbors. There are sporadic mentionings. This is about need to create interconnectors, trans-border smuggling, fighting with this phenomenon, and also this can be done with, in cooperation with our partners, but they do not speak about relations of other character and about the policy in this area of and also they do not mention regional unions. They do not speak about Visegrad 4, and we should work with it them, and we will do it. And they do not say about initiative of 3 Cs. We are not the members, but this is at our borders. And also Black Sea region is mentioned in security context, but we do not mention about it when we speak about cooperation with the nations that are in the region of the Black Sea. So this neighboring policy should be strengthened. At this, I would like to say that the program of the government maybe do not contain all the ideas of the government. Maybe they have them. And I believe that our speakers will mention additionally about some points. Also, there is a problem concerning countries that are outside NATO and the EU. These countries are, to a large extent, they are not mentioned directly. Some unions are mentioned in the Middle East, in the East, and in Africa. They are mentioned in economic sector. They are mentioned in the program, but it is not clearly stated about, and there is no without deeper analysis, you may not even notice them there. Also, strategic partners. Of course, we understand that Ukraine has really a lot of strategic partners, those who are identified as such partners, but we believe that we should mention some of them. The document does not contain mentioning of US, Canada, neither other big players that are potentially are able to play a big role in the region. For example, China, that is now active in the neighboring countries and plays a big role at international arena. And it should be taken into account as positive or negative player, but in any case, this is a player that is present in the territory. So during the presentation in July, when we were speaking about the rights of Ukrainians abroad and about the work with diaspora, some of our guests, especially, they focused on these issues. They said that Ukraine needs to work more with diaspora, to involve Ukrainians from abroad to develop this direction of foreign policy, because often the work with Ukrainians who live abroad, it may be like a soft force that is usually undervalued in Ukraine. If we look at this program that we have, we see reinforcement of consulate service, consulate establishments, but analysis is lacking how we will work with diaspora. And despite some officials raised the issues of about dual citizenship, that is an acute issue for Ukrainians. In the program, we do not see proper resolution of this dual citizenship problem. Summing up, sorry, I have some professional deformation. As a person who deals a lot with Moldovan issues, we have similar narratives. 2 new governments that say that they need to complete their home tasks. The similarity has pluses and minuses. Among pluses, we really need to complete our home tasks because this is expected by our foreign counterparts. From the other side, we cannot alienate from the whole foreign policy situation, because this won't be efficient, because there is dynamics in foreign policy, and this will influence policy inside Ukraine and how we will be able to implement those tasks. And the last thing I wanted to say in this context, we believe that in the program, clear steps were lacking concerning international consolidation to support Ukraine to continue the work to preserve sanctions against Russian Federation. I do not exclude that these steps will be made, but from the analysis of the program, we cannot get this information. So thank you for your attention. Thank you, Sergey. It is hard to say. We have optimistic or pessimistic view after this analysis. So we will try to find out those who should implement this policy of the government. There are two interrelated, I believe, issues and question to Alexey. Do you believe that those three goals that are your tasks concerning the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or do you have other tasks within the government program? And is consulate service enough? Because sometimes you open the document and you believe that this is the program for consulates, but where are policies and foreign policy of Ukraine? Thank you for your question. This reminds me some paraphrase from known film. When you look at the program of the government and you do not see priorities. Yes, I do not. No, I do not see them, but they are in there. So we believe that there are important elements on the program. They exist, and you should look at this program as the program of technocratic government, and it is presented on the site of the government. And I'm really pleased that this program was made with the use of the project approach that is used in business. It is alpha and omega in business. There are proper goals, the mechanisms of implementation of those goals. There are ways to measure it. So a smart approach was included in the government program. So the basis is the clear orientation for the needs and interests of a person, a businessman, investor, and other stakeholders. And the main characteristic of this program is measurability and quantification. We should understand that not everything in the activity of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs can be quantified. Not all can be quantified in bilateral relations. That's why some priorities were identified for measurement. Those things that are oriented to the citizen, and this is included in the program. These are the three topics we spoke about. Three goals. Ukrainians satisfied how the state protects them abroad, and this is not just a slogan. If you ask citizens, this is what they face now, the citizens of Ukraine, what the ministry does for them, Minister of Foreign Affairs. This is the protection of Ukrainian citizens abroad. Second, Ukrainians freely travel the world without visas, and this is the task. And it is fully supported by our people, and we are interested in this. We know that Ukrainians become much freer when the visa-free regime was established with the EU, and this is priority for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to satisfy the needs of our people. And then business, culture, sport, they are supported abroad. If you go to the site of the ministry, you will see the mission that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs adopted for itself in 2015. This is to represent Ukraine abroad, protect Ukrainian citizen, and to promote Ukrainian business culture, to go to foreign markets. This mission is within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It remains within the ministry. This is the mission. And the diplomats here and abroad, our diplomatic institutions abroad, they are guided by these goals. This program is directed at the citizen, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it has a big system of priorities. It is on our internal documents. And each year, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs submits to the President for consideration the priorities of the activity for the next year. And each time the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if you remember about it, it reports on the achievements of these priorities at the end of the year. And we will continue to do this, and we will inform you. We will do it also through Prism, and I believe we have good cooperation with you, and we believe that this mechanism of cooperation will continue to work. What other topics I would like to mention that we do not see, but what that exists there? It is important that the topic of European and Euro-Atlantic integration, this topic remains a priority of the government and the priority of the parliament. I remind you that Vice Premier position was preserved concerning European integration, and in the parliament they have a committee on foreign affairs and integration to the European Union committee. So for me, as a diplomat, I'm really pleased that diplomacy remains foreseeable, and there is proper continuation of the policy. And for diplomats, this is really important when there are proper and continuous steps, and it is well foreseeable for our foreign partners. And the sphere of foreign policy, it is not reduced to the government. President, parliament, they have the responsibility in this area. Once again, here we see that there is continuity in these 5 years. The President, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and executive and legislative power, and moreover, media and the public. We worked in one team. We tried to speak in one voice. That's why foreign policy was efficient. It will remain efficient when we will play in one team at home and abroad. It is really important to say that there is lack of mentioning of some partners, because it is difficult to measure the relationship with our neighbors, with the strategic partners. But this is a priority that remains as the priority in the work of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I would like to say that what we see in the program of the government, it is added with clearly identified priorities that are formed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the beginning of the year. And in our activity, we shift to the project approach, to the use of so-called smart approach in planning. And I believe that this is the basis of efficiency of Ukrainian foreign policy. And when we speak not only about broadening and bringing to the new level, this is by default is impossible and contradicts, but we will speak about achievement of proper goals. And the citizen of Ukraine should get proper results from our activity. Svyatoslav Alexey said that previous 5 years, the government and the parliament tried to have one team in foreign policy arena. We will speak with Anya about it later. Will you be able to speak in one voice as a committee? And you see that there are more spheres for your committee, not just result-based management that was mentioned by Alexey, because there are some measurable indicators that are mentioned. Where is your place in this program? The program adds our views. This should not be some cacophony, and the power should work like a symphony. And during the campaign, yes, I said that in Euro-Atlantic dimension, we will continue. There are no contradictions in this area. So for 5 years, we won't enter NATO and the European Union, but some points should be implemented for our future integration. That's why we focus on activity, not just on declarations that it was done by the previous power. Several other points about Africa and Latin American markets. We saw that there was a visit of the president to Japan, and he met with Mr. Bolsonaro, and there is an interest and a big wish to work on these new markets and to have proper strategy there. And the parliament tried to promote this idea. And we met with the Brazilian ambassador, and we want to have more cooperation with these countries, not just tourism. I'm not just a member of the committee. I also deal with the protection of rights of Ukrainians abroad. This is about diaspora and our citizens who migrated abroad because of some reasons. And I would like to say that in the recent months, you will see the laws on citizenship and also about the laws concerning the status of Ukrainians abroad. And there is a passport of foreign passport and for Ukrainians, and also we know that the diaspora wants to cooperate more with us, and Ukrainian citizens should not be considered as a problem, but as an opportunity for our diplomacy. Not just the president and the parliament should deal with foreign policy, but also our citizens abroad should be our so-called diplomats as well. About the topic of consolidation of international support for Ukraine to counteract Russian aggression, and a lot has been said about it. And Alexey said about measurable indicators. And what about the goal? 120 countries vote for Crimean resolution in December each year. So we see that the number of those who support this declaration decrease. So could we promote this, and are there such goals in the program? There are measurable indicators, but there are also goals and tasks, and we didn't see this in the program of the government. This is more people-oriented or electorate-oriented, voters-oriented. This is the approach of consumption. So they wanted just to vote for this faster, and evidently these three goals that were mentioned, that Ukrainians are satisfied that their interests are protected. The main is the strengthening of subjectivity of Ukraine to restore sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, because if the state is not able to use all measures through the ministry to protect Ukrainian citizens, and protection in the world of Ukrainians is not such a high priority as protection of Ukrainians inside the country from aggression. And Sasha Litvinenko said that in the first press release, they said about softening of rhetoric concerning Russian aggression, but then this document disappeared from the site, and there is a red line in this program. So they want to have more friendly relations, but Russia didn't do anything to improve the situation and to restore trust. So I didn't see this in the program of the government, such things that were mentioned by experts. So preservation of sanctions is not mentioned. Also, there is political turbulence and deterioration of relations with US and the plans of Macron to cooperate more with Russia. And also we see Nord Stream 2 construction, and we may speak about important area concerning energy security of Ukraine. This is not only about Nord Stream 2. When the Ukrainian government started to buy electrical energy due to Mr. Gera's amendments. So in this way, and Ukraine, it wants to get united with European system, and so EU. And this is the issue of diplomacy, and it is lacking in this area. Also, we have such direction as protection of domestic interests through international institutions, and there are successful examples. Ashad Bank, 1,300,000,000. And also one of the issues that is discussed in Normandy format, this is the gas contract and its continuation. One of the conditions of Russia that Ukraine should forget about the fact that Russia should return 2,600,000,000 as it was decided by the court. So this document is oriented on protection of people, but many issues are not included. This is about mainly protection of the rights of Ukrainians abroad. About previous convocation, so the address of the Verkhovna Rada concerning condemnation of Putin's regime and the repression against indigenous peoples who live in the territory of Russian Federation. This was one of the examples of offensive foreign policy when we are not like victims, but the subject that provides its support to peoples that in 2013 Del, Ural, Moldova, Erzya people, they didn't send the children to fight against Ukrainian army in the war of Russia on Ukraine, and many people faced repressions. And Rafi Shapov, he got political asylum in London, and he is the representative of this community from the indigenous people of Russian Federation. Also, we communicated through the ministry, and this address will be great if the Baltic states, and I spoke last week in Riga, there was Security Forum, and the last two events was a Security Forum and the Riga Security Forum. There were no deputies who are now in power, and not ex-deputies should go there, like Yatsenyuk, former prime minister. And there was an invitation for the Committee on Foreign Policy. We should have proper representation during these forums, and I believe that Solomia Bobrovska now deals with this area concerning study of Russian situation, the protest movement and situation with the indigenous people, and we believe that the committee should continue with that, and the ministry should continue with these issues, and I hope that will be proper support not only by committee but also by the leadership of the parliament, that there will be well coordinated actions. One more initiative of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, where the support is needed from the ministry and from the government. This is the strategy of Ukraine in getting international support. In 2015, there were parliamentary hearings, committee hearings, inventarization of international help and the efficiency of its use, and about the real needs of Ukraine, because donors, they have their own views, but they often do not coincide with the priorities of Ukraine. Now we have negotiations with the committee. They created a subcommittee that is called the Subcommittee on Foreign Policy and Control over Efficiency of International Support. And I hope that until the end of the year, there will be hearings on this, especially after investment forum in Mariupol. We should understand, because there is a report of the accounting chamber, and they say that there are millions and billions that are not used properly. Investment Bank, the World Bank, BRD, 400 million euro we ratified in 2016 from European Investment Bank to support farmers, big and small farmers. There were some contradictions between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agricultural Policy, and this money was not provided to the farmers still. So what else I would like to say? I really hope that there will be strategy concerning foreign policy of Ukraine, and it will reflect all those areas, and neighboring policy of Moldova, Belarus, Turkey, and this is really important, and also foreign economic activity is important. Latin America is now also have proper focus, and Brazil, Argentina, there were some deputies who traveled there. They spoke about Alcantara projects, space project, and military and defense sector, but there was powerful influence of Russian Federation there. Also the issue of Africa. Foreign Affairs Committee in 2015, we started an initiative, Africa Day, to celebrate it in the committee, and then in the Diplomatic Academy, this day was marked, but there were no visits of the president to these countries, but there were some parliamentary delegations from Africa to our country. So we have potential there, but there is expansion of China and other big players, and we should work more with these countries. Also, the law on diplomatic service, in 8th convocation of the parliament, it was adopted despite the veto and inability to return to the slot the provision concerning preliminary consultations in the process of nomination of the diplomats, and the Servant of the People Party, they say that they are open, they do not want to usurp the power. I believe that this law should be improved concerning diplomatic service, because, for example, in the US, this is an important country, but we know the story about one diplomat that was nominated, but then there was no proper decision, and there should be proper rotation of the diplomats. For 12 years in Vatican, we have the same diplomat. 12 years in one country, I believe a person loses the feeling for one's own country. And I believe that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they should rotate the diplomats in some countries, because many diplomats work for 10 years in one position, and I believe that some changes should be made, and in America we should have professional diplomat ambassador who will be able in this difficult condition to fight for our interests. I mentioned Vatican, and also I would like to speak about church diplomacy. This is an important area, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs cooperate with the All Ukrainian Union of Churches, And we see the Epiphany meeting with Pompeo, and this is one of the areas of our work. And the state and church, they are independent powers, but the process of recognition of autocephaly that happened recently when Greek church did this, and it is important to work in Romania with Romanian church and Georgian church, and this should be not just responsibility of Ukrainian church. There should be coordination of efforts with official bodies of Ukrainian state, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other institutions, because you know that Moscow Patriarchy played a big role in Ukraine previously. And this is a really important issue. On the 12th of November in Brussels, there will be Kubilis, who became the deputy of the European partner, and the association trio will be presented for Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. And this is the modification of Marshall Plan about roadmap, about investment, about the steps to the membership. And I'm really glad that on the committee there is Salomia Bobrovska, Elena Homenka, and they are ready to meet with people, and they are ready to continue with this direction in order to make important steps to have this continuity. And we Ukrainians, we should work as a team, as a national team. And changes like decentralization reform, they need tens of years, and we should not be ashamed of what our predecessors did. We should focus more on what we do now. And I'm really interested, as the head of the committee, what will be the visits of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, and do they have directions, US, Berlin, and other visits, and Moldova and other countries? Do they have proper plans? So I will reduce my list, but one thing I would like to say, when we summed up the work of the Committee of Aid Convocation, we have also recommendations for the work. This is the support of the idea that the Holodomor should be recognized as genocide against Ukrainian people. This initiative should continue. And during aid convocations, we supported this, and Portugal recognized, they believe that it should be recognized. And recently, and in the nearest future, in Bundestag, there will be a meeting concerning recognition of Holodomor as genocide. And Ukrainian, World Ukrainian Union and other organizations, they should support this idea. We should have the right moment. Now, this is not the right moment if we are speaking about peaceful regulation in Donbass and other issues. It should be a part of cultural policy, because culture and economy that are mentioned in the program and what we want to see, our goals, our identity. When Ukraine becomes member of EU and NATO, maybe we should have a name. We should become members, and the criteria, they are the instruments, and we have goals that are envisaged by our constitution, going back to genocide and Holodomor. After scandals with Mr. Gritsak, and that our ambassador made some official addresses, so we believe that committee should have hearings on this responsibility of Germany before Ukraine in and some Ukrainian historians that are on the commission, they should be interested in responsibility of Germany before Ukraine, and we should understand tragic facts of the Second World War. I have optimism for the future, and due to these events, we are able to hear new ideas, to include them, and to continue our work to create powerful foreign policy agenda and its implementation. Thank you. Veronica, now we go back from cultural and religious things to economic diplomacy. Here we see that there is economization of foreign policy, but from the other side, can we say that economic diplomacy, this is only improvement of our rating and doing business, or in other ratings? Should the state identify priority markets in its programs? If we are speaking about goals and results, that, for example, we want to go to Brazil, market, Peru, military sector, Sri Lanka, maritime industry, or to propose some pickles for Iraq, for example. So maybe there should be customs conditions created by the government, and then the business should promote itself. Thank you very much for your question. I will move from the last question. The government should create conditions at the customs, and also they should look at the situation abroad. This is not only about domestic affairs and customs, that it should be simplified, and it should be less costly, and it should be deprived from illegal payments. And we should have maximum access to our partners, all of them, because now the world, despite recent actions of US and in some sectors we have some duties that were increased, but now the world has low level of economic limitations. Why we really need free economic zone? Because we were the country that didn't have. We were losing in competition because we didn't have zero customs duty. We should decrease the tariffs, and there are many technical regulations. It differs. European Union may be considered as exemplary. That's why we are oriented to the European Union. Speaking briefly, the government should think about the decrease of the barriers and what barriers should be decreased. So, as a liberal economist, I believe that business should be more active in this. And there are proper markets that are included in the strategy, and it makes sense. It is important when the resources are limited. It is impossible to open all the markets at once. That's why the state should focus on some areas. It doesn't exclude other markets, but we should focus our resources somewhere. Frankly speaking, when I came to this meeting, I wanted to speak about one doubling, and I believe it creates an efficient use of funds in our country. This doubling is reflected in this program of the government that is smart and with clear goals. The Ministry of Economic Development and Trade and Agriculture, it has a clear goal to increase export, clear plan, clear steps, but we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs after reform in 2010. It is also responsible for export. And their goals, Ukrainian culture, sport and business, that they get proper support abroad. There is one measurable indicator, this is the increase of export of investment. Okay, export of goods and services and culture and sports, these are services. Okay, maybe, but this is dissemination of resources. And there were trade missions under the Ministry of Economy at that time. Now these issues are dealt by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but all the issues concerning development of foreign trade, this is done by the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and the Office of Economic Affairs is also under this ministry, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it plays in the same field, and they have the Council of Exporters and Investors that deals with the issues of foreign economic activity. In the program, I read these, and I'm interested. So I'm interested in this, the criteria and what the Ministry of Economic Affairs will do in this area to create digitalized platform to support the subjects of foreign economic policy. And what about the office and separate digital ministry? And we will reach the progress concerning free trade zones. I know that the ministry, and I'm sure that Ms. Zerkal and Kachka, they actively cooperate, and we saw it on different examples. But this is an institutional issue. Who does what? This is the matter of the functions. Because, for example, I may find information on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and information on the Ministry of Economic Development, and they spend the resources twice because they double their functions concerning many issues. I support economization and the proper focus on economy, but I believe that we should think about responsibility. Who should be responsible? And I believe that the Ministry of Foreign Policy, they should have the core activities, the support of exporters and the interests of Ukraine abroad, and the issue of formation of trade policy plus promotion of this trade policy. This should be within the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So, Mikhailo, the most complicated task is for you to make some conclusions and to answer global questions, whether we are able to say that foreign policy took proper place in the program of the government, and can we expect that the foreign policy will take a proper place in foreign policy for the next 5 years and in domestic policy as well? So this is the program of the government for midterm prospect, and this is a guideline for other ministries and governmental bodies. The priorities are established. They are the key for the ministries. What are the priorities that are identified for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? It was said already. Speaking about diplomatic language, I believe there are no key priorities that are needed for the country. We may assess it differently, but it looks like that this program was written for some well-developed country where there is no Donbass, no Crimea, that we are in NATO, there is no war, and so on and so forth. So this area should be included in the program of the government. And for foreign policy of Ukraine, as always, for the policy, there are 3 key areas: provision of foreign conditions for domestic development, security, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and protection of citizens abroad. 3 areas like this. And they should have based their program on these main ideas. So I believe that in this program, there is no important thing mentioned by Ghana, and this is a principal thing: identification of the concept strategic pillars of foreign policy. We do not have strategy on foreign policy. Please open the documents on the basis of foreign policy. You should just cancel it because there are two changes that were introduced about NATO and EU. There is no Russia, no Crimea. Also, the third point, there is no strategy concerning relationship with Russian Federation. And here we have a problem of Steinmeier formula, Zelensky formula, and there are different trends that are included in this. There is a serious lack of conceptual strategic approaches in to the foreign policy area. And here they should speak about reform of foreign policy. There are three areas of for reform. First, to identify the basis of foreign policy, to provide for the system of relations with other countries, directions, functions of structures, all the bodies that are working in this area, and reform of the main instrument of foreign policy, the reform in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There should be proper reforms in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. One more aspect. I believe that they spoke about consulate service. This is one of the main areas. This is really important. And here we need not just to broaden the number of consulates, but also to provide more serious financial and legal grounds to support our citizens abroad, those citizens who face some force majeure circumstances. On the whole, summing up, I would like to say that this program, it needs improvement. It needs to be more precise. Some serious principle changes should be made to it because many points are lacking. I believe this is evident that some areas are just missing for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and for the Cabinet of Ministers. The priorities that were mentioned, these priorities, these are top priorities, and this program, it doesn't contain these priorities. We have 10 minutes more. Maybe 2 or 3 questions, not comments, but questions. I'm a strict moderator, and I would like to say about this at once. So we would like to have 2 or 3 questions and one remark from me. Anna said that we would like to see deputies who will represent Ukraine abroad. And on the 5th of December, Ukrainian Prism, Ukraine Great Expectation Conference will be held. And Mr. Arhamia and Mr. Goncharuk and Mr. Milovania, they confirmed their participation, fingers crossed, because we never know how it is going to be. We hope that they will come and we will have such wonderful representation at our platform from Ukraine and from other nations. Now we have time for question. Thank you. I believe that the moderator was right when she said that this is for dessert. So maybe we should speak about it earlier in our discussion. I would like to say about priorities in the strategy. So about representation and protection abroad. This is about international conventions. Going back to the question, to the representatives of the 7th of the People Party and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, about the membership, NATO membership. do they envisage to make some steps to prepare a program? Next week there will be a meeting with Euro-Atlantic Council with Secretary General of NATO. Also energy independence, like in Poland, and the steps concerning direct investment. So people speak about it, but we cannot hide behind these words. Do they envisage to reach those goals? So the next question in the first row. Good afternoon. Stanislav Zhelechovsky, candidate of political sciences. Thank you, speakers, for your wonderful speeches. I have a question addressed to all the speakers. It is not a secret that recently Ukraine in the turbulence zone, not because of its fault, because the world system of international relations among the state, it suffers from Russian Federation. Russia promotes its interests internationally, and Ukraine becomes a victim of this pressure. And there is a reinforcement of the role of Russia in the Black Sea region, Syrian crisis, that becomes threatening for the world. And Turkish case is also important. Return of Russia to PACE and Brexit crisis in US, political crisis. I have a question about Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ukraine as a state, how it should respond to these threats and how to protect its national interests as a political entity, how to oppose these threats, and what will be further steps in the international arena if we take into account our promotion of our policy and the actions of our partners. Good afternoon. Victoria Dovichenko. Honestly speaking, I would like to speak about Italian Republic. Two questions about interparliamentary cooperation, because agreement was signed between governments of Italy and Ukraine, and during 2019 we didn't see any changes, and we hope that this cooperation will only increase. Also, we would like to know about the cooperation of new Ukrainian government with Italy, because this is important for export activity. And in 2017, 2018, we saw that this is an important partner. So Italy is always on my radar, and I would like to hear your opinion on cooperation between these countries. Unfortunately, we may take only 3 questions because time is lacking. About military sector and proper cooperation. So you may choose questions. We will start from Svyatoslav to Alexey. 1 minute maximum. About NATO in all the fronts. Investment, response to threats, Brexit, and expansion of Russian Federation, and Italy will be for digestive. First question was to the team that is in power about empty words. So we change our rhetoric from panic that we are a victim and give us everything. We would like to make a value proposition to the world. And we have big interest to our country. We see it at international panels. And also people buy our bonds in the London market, and we may help Ukraine to prosper. There will be Mariupol Forum, and leadership will come there, and they will discuss potential of the country, and there is proper international focus on Ukraine, and we should fight corruption. Investors, they want not just a wonderful picture from us and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They should see proper reality and proper laws, and we will do everything possible to create all this. Concerning NATO, 100 times we said it, and we will say it once again. We want to enter NATO, and we wanted that opposition verified our actions concerning this issue. And about Italy and our community there is a spectrum of problems, and we should create proper structure, proper community in Italy. And I do not remember other questions. That's why I give a mic to my colleague. So the power makes several mistakes domestically and internationally. It is impossible to resolve issues of Donbass in turbo mode in half a year, and to reject peacekeeping mission that it may be placed only along the border. This was said from the beginning by President Zelensky. I may cite him. They said communication is lacking between the power and society. I do not want to focus on this. I would like to say that this power should have proper conceptual approach to foreign policy. Mr. Daniluk recently, 2 months ago, said about necessity and announced the meeting of the Security Council on Donbass. It didn't happen. And they didn't work on this concept. And this is the key area in the sphere of foreign policy. This should not be done in a manual mode. It should be done properly. About investment, briefly. As I understand, in order to attract investment, what the government wants, I do not say that this will happen, but what I see active privatization and repetition of positive experience of what we had 10 years ago, also to create agricultural land market. Now this is a vague idea about foreign investment in this area, and also improvement, provision of supremacy of law and protection of the rights of ownership, both intellectual and property protection rights. If it happens, so the goal of foreign investment, they put this goal at 50 billion. This is really a lot. And how can our state implement it? And what will be the change in the attitude towards us from the side of foreign investors and our views on foreign investors? But I'm not very optimistic. We worked on Marshall Plan in Brussels, and they asked, why do you ask 5 billion? one oligarch took away 5 billion from Ukraine through his bank. Maybe you should take this money from him. I believe that private bank issues remains on the top of our agenda, and institutional capacity is lacking to deal with this money. And I believe that the deputies and other officials, they do not have this rhetoric of campaigning. And there will be an assembly of NATO in May, and we should get prepared to it seriously. About Italy, there was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs traveled there in November, and till the end of the year, they should create a list of the countries. There is money in the parliament for these visits, and we should establish the lists of the countries where they should travel. So I believe that there should not be any PR about dual citizenship, and I speak about it openly. I also would like to say that the committee has the ability, and Mr. Rijma, they have proper access to the secret documents and the situation in Belarus, in Azov Sea. We should have closed meetings. We should also have the meetings with the Security and Defense Council and the Security Service, and we should speak about these issues. We should have this proper approach to these issues, but not nominate some civils to the committee. Ukrainian diplomacy is in the right hands. We cannot have 28 priorities. So maybe there is constitutional norm about integration to the European Union and NATO. It is envisaged by constitution. That's why the state goes along this way. Counteraction to Russian aggression and restoration and territorial integrity over occupied territories of Donbas and Crimea. These are the priorities in the work of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and this priority is in the tasks, daily and monthly tasks and yearly tasks that we will implement, and we will do it. Relations with the different countries. Each embassy provides their own priorities, and in this way we create a comprehensive picture of foreign policy. Interaction with the government, with the Verkhovna Rada. This is what we do constantly, and this helps us to formulate the overall picture of Ukrainian diplomacy. Ukrainian diplomacy is in the right hands, and we have focus on opposition to Russian aggression and implementation of constitutional norm to get membership in the EU and NATO. These are our main priorities. Thank you for being with us today. I hope that Ukrainian Prism will hold one more event in December, and we will sum up situation foreign policy, and we will see how these 3 priorities will be implemented during these 3 months. And in April, we will present the results of assessment of foreign policy. We will analyze the situation, what we achieve, and what are the prospects for the future. Thank you very much. We are always glad to see you.